You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weird Science Comics YouTube channel, where I'm going to preview the comics that are going to be coming up this week. June 27th is when they will hit. That is a Tuesday, and that's when all of those DC comics hit. And there's a bunch of comics coming out this week, some bigger than others. We have a finale. We also have most of these stopping because of the Great Night Terrors with a K that will be hitting when we end up heading into July because of all that nonsense that DC has decided to kind of derail the momentum of all of this Dawn of DC. And it has been getting some pretty good momentum. A lot of people telling me that they're reading the comics again, things that they haven't been reading in quite some time. So we're going to jump into this. And the first book that will be previewed is the old Action Comics. Action Comics number 1056. It's one of my favorite Dawn of DC books coming out right now and is on my $25 do or die pull list. It's written by Phillip Kennedy Johnson, who does the main story, Dan Jurgens, who's doing the Young John story, and then Dorado Quick, who has that odd feeling steelwork story. And I say that it's odd feeling mainly because we already have, or now have, Old Worf, Michael Dorn, doing a Steelworks proper miniseries. So it kind of feels like that Dorado Quick was supposed to be a prelude to that, but now they're coming out, together simultaneously in a very, very odd deal. So we'll see how it goes. And art by Max Raynor, Lee Weeks, Yasmn, Flores, Montanez, and it's $4.99, which is one of the good things about this book. Even with the 3 stories, we end up having it still only $4.99, towing the line at $4.99. As some people do say, nobody actually says that, but I figured that I would say it. And Zach Walker, hey Zach, he's excited for Action Comics. I am too. Now, Dorado Quick, that story will end with this one here. And then once we get back in September, because this is unfortunately one of those books that is going to end up stopping, we'll get a new third story. And hopefully that next third story hits, but it's Magdalene Visaggio doing a new character. And I'd like to say that I'd go and check out what that's all about, but like about 90% of all DC creators, Magdalene Visaggio has blocked me on Twitter. But here is the solicit written by Phillip Kennedy Johnson, Dan Jurgens, and Dorado Quick. Art, but I don't know why they end up going into these with these solicits now, including the credits, which they already said, and also Rafa Sandoval. Luckily, they did say that because Rafa Sandoval on the Phillip Kennedy Johnson deal, and I do like Rafa Sandoval's art. A shocking new character makes their debut as the thrill-packed Speeding Bullets concludes. Superman and Metallo must reluctantly join forces to stop the cyborg Superman, with Tracy Corbin's life, or at least her humanity, hanging in the balance. The super family fights to keep Metropolis standing. Meanwhile, Lois and the staff of the Daily Planet set to uncover the mysterious leader and shocking origin of Blue Earth. And I don't know. The big play here, obviously, is getting the Eradicator last issue going and teaming up already with Metallo, heading off to get Cyborg Superman. I mean, that sounds cool, right? You get a lot of classic villains, a lot of Superman stuff, and even the whole super family going. I don't really care that much about Blue Earth. I know you kind of give Lois something to do there, and kind of that Blue Earth stuff, push that aside for me. But we'll see how that all works out and what that ends up doing. But again, they don't say anything in the solicit, but I'm also looking forward to seeing how that Young John story ends up, because it looks like we'll end arcs at least here because of going off into the Night Terrors with a K. But like I said, Dorado Quick Steel story, that's going to end, which, well, you don't really need it anymore. We have Worf, Michael Dorn. He's doing the Steelworks story. And if you haven't read that Steelworks Dawn of DC start by Michael Dorn, it was okay. I'm not going to tell you it wowed the heck out of me, but I didn't mind it. I said I thought it was capable. So I'm looking forward to that. And I believe that continues on. There's a weird play that a lot of these books will continue through Night Terrors with a K, some won't, and we'll go through that. One that I know will be going through the whole night terrors is actually Batman the Brave and the Bold. And when I talked about that, and I think a lot of people ended up talking about it, when it first was even announced, that it felt like it was Urban Legends Part 2, pretty much Electric Boogaloo, the whole deal with that. And I hope that it ends up feeling a little bit bigger as we go, because it did feel like a lot of, okay, you already canceled Urban Legends. Why are you doing this? But we'll have to see. And as I'm saying that, trying desperately to get the preview up, there you go. But we end up having Batman Brave and the Bold #2. One of the big, obviously, the big thing actually is Tom King's story, him and Mitch Gerads. One of the things that you're going to get in this issue, though, is going to be that black and white end story. And that'll be Joelle Jones doing a black and white story. So that's kind of cool. But we're going to continue the other stuff in it. And here it's Batman the Brave and the Bold #2, written by Tom King, Ed Brisson, Christopher Cantwell, and Joelle Jones. Art by Joelle Jones, Mitch Gerads, Jeff Spokes, and Javier Rodriguez. $7.99. That's quite the price tag. I know that there's a lot of stories here, but the whole play, I don't know. If you're not enjoying every one, you start to question, is it worth it? Is it worth $8? I know just this past week, you ended up at Marvel, the Jonathan Hickman Ultimate Invasion story that people were losing their mind because I believe it was $8.99, $9. That had some extra pages. It also had some nonsense, but I don't know. The idea of having these books that are that expensive, not only does it, make people have to buy it, but what are you going to drop if you only have a certain amount of money? And me and Eric end up doing on our regular DC Comics podcast, we end up having our $25 do or die pull list. Well, if you're going to play that game and you only have $25 for a month, you can't get an $8 book. It's just going to screw you. You're not going to be able to get that much. So neither of us had it on there. And I see Zach, he's talking about the Stormwatch story. What are you, Eric? You and Eric. He was talking about it when we got done this week's podcast. He ended up talking about the whole play of, man, I can't wait for that Stormwatch story. I'm like, really? That's what you can't wait for? But yeah, you have here where Mark McGrath even said that he read the Batman Brave and the Bold on the Infinite app. And that's probably where a lot of people will end up reading it, especially if you have the Ultra. You can go and do that. That's a pretty good play overall. Again, I don't feel like I need another Tom King Batman Joker story. And that's where I really end up. Where is it worth it to get that? I know Tom King has fans, right? Don't we all? But even some fans, I would think, have to be kind of tired of that. But here is the solicit here. Tick, tick, tick goes the clock as Gotham City prepares for another shocking moida at the hands of the Joker. The brutal and terrifying tale of the Joker and Batman's first meeting continues as Tom King and Mitch Gerads once again deliver a shocking, bloody, blockbuster tale. I love the idea, too. You have all this going on, and people forget that stupid Killing Time story. That story sucked. That Tom King, but that was awful. We were even talking about that on the podcast this week, where me and Eric were talking about, why can't Tom King have any fun? And Eric said, well, I thought that Killing Time was going to be the fun book. It was not. It was not the fun book, if you ask me. But then you get Stormwatch race to find an ancient sword that has long been buried in the darkest depths of the ocean, a sword of unspeakable horrors, capable of wiping out entire civilizations. But they may already be too late. Oh, my goodness. A group of exiled Zebels have found the blade and are hell-bent. Wouldn't that be Zebellians? Have found the blade and are hell-bent on bringing humanity to its knees. For one member of Stormwatch, this may be the end. That sounds kind of cool, right? It sounds kind of neat. I'm telling you, I laugh at the idea that the Stormwatch story would be the big one for people, but it might end up being the breakout hit of it. Though, if you listen to that solicit, and one of the things by the end, I'll mention it now, Unbreakable Doom Patrol, Unstoppable Doom Patrol, I don't know if that comes out this week. I ended up seeing some sites saying that it comes out this week. Other sites were saying that it comes out the 11th of July. Then I went to see Comixology. I couldn't even find it. So I ended up pushing that aside and not doing it. But the Stormwatch stuff, it feels a lot like what we get with the Unstoppable Doom Patrol. While they're collecting people and kids and mutants and metas, you end up where Stormwatch, they're running around and grabbing relics and things. And whenever Eric talks about it, and I think that Zach might think the same, it seems like Zach and Eric are on the same wavelength, which is scary to me. And Zach, you better get yourself checked. But when all this goes down, Eric is really convinced that Stormwatch will cross over with Doom Patrol, that will cross over with the Vigil. Doing all that. So if it does, maybe that would be cool. But yeah, you end up where, yeah, Tom Hunter said, yeah, but Tom King doing Tom King in writing again. And that is true. You just get the same things over and over with them. But I guess if you like it, then you continue liking it. I don't know. But then it continues. All-star creator Joelle Jones, Catwoman, Wonder Girl, all-star creator and person who ends up not hitting deadlines all the time is how I think they should say. It gives readers a Batman black and white tale exploring Batman's scars, both literal and psychological. It's funny when you do this, we had this kind of thing even in the New 52 where Batman ended up dying. He got a new body. So the scars were gone, but the guy's busy. He gets those scars back very quickly, but it says both literal and psychological, revisiting the Dark Knight's toughest fights and deepest wounds. Aren't the deepest wounds the ones that you get from life and love? I think so. That's what I say. I tell my wife, she's wounded me constantly. She is. And I will apologize to everyone if while we're doing this, you either hear my wife screaming at me, ignore that. But also, if you hear dogs going nuts, try to ignore that as well, because we're busy watching our son's dogs. My son, Rafe, who we have 2 kids that still live here at home. And Rafe decided that he was going to get a dog because, when you're still living at home, the best thing to do to be able to move out is to get a dog because so many apartments and things allow dogs, right? So he gets a dog. Maybe also he should work in getting a job, but still, that's just me. But he gets a dog, right? So then our youngest son, Logan, who's just turned 16, he decides he needs a dog just because Rafe has a dog. And now we have 2 dogs, but yet they don't change any of their game up. None of the game has changed. They still go out. They're doing all these things. And then we get stuck watching these dogs. But then, as Tanya said, we don't think we're going to have grandkids. So she's fine with that. I said, that's fine with me. But if you hear the dogs, howling and barking, that is why. But we'll continue with this. Where am I? Oh, the wounds that Batman has had. I start talking about my wounds. I'll keep going. In part 2 of Order of the Black Lamp from writer Christopher Cantwell, as we hear on the Thinking Critical and especially the Comic Aficionado show that I'm on quite often, the Christopher can't write well. But I'll tell you, Christopher Cantwell's first story in this Black Lamp, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. And I'll go with that because I think that he is a hack. And artist Javier Rodriguez, Superman uses a mysterious decoder ring to uncover a location with a shocking tie to his past. And it did look like it was going to be a girl from his past that they had, that young love at camp, and they ended up losing track of each other, things like that. And if you remember, the last issue had where Superman was going with that decoder ring into a giant mountain. It seemed okay. But I think I'm with Zach and Eric that I think that the Stormwatch story is probably the one that I would be more inclined to be excited about overall. I think that might be the one that, we can all get around and have some fun with. But one of the breakout things going on right now, and I hope that people gave the We Are Legends books, a little bit of a try, even if you had the Ultra deal, the app. And you decide, well, I'm not going to buy Spirit World or The Vigil or City Boy, but I'll give the first issues a try and see how they are. And I really thought that the first issues of all of those were way better than I thought. They actually really shocked me how much I enjoyed them because I'm a miserable prick and I don't love things, right? That's my problem. But I actually liked all 3 starts. Now, if you've been listening to our podcast or the videos that I do here on YouTube, you'll know that I wasn't quite so down with the second issue of Spirit World. And the problem was in that Alyssa Wong ended up going off the deep end, trying to get on a soapbox instead of telling a story. And it didn't make sense. And I don't mind if you have something to tell. And even if I don't agree with it or I don't love what still, if it's something that might be intriguing or personal to somebody, all the power to you. But it has to make sense. It has to make sense in the story. It has to, go okay. And the idea that Alyssa Wong comes out and starts going on with this idea of dead naming Xanthi, it didn't make any sense in the story. Xanthi was 5 years old and died and had been missing for 15 years, comes back, and their mom ends up losing. Like they're having a fight, like this was their big thing that they couldn't get over, when Xanthi was 5. It made no sense. And if you do go off and you die and you decide to change your name, you got to give people a break if they don't know that. They're alive. You're dead. I don't get it. But also, even that, what got pushed aside to me, I don't know if everybody would agree, but there was also a very stereotypical play here with an Asian mom whose daughter comes back from the dead, died when they were 5, comes back from the dead, and immediately the mom's trying to hook up the daughter with one of her co-workers' sons that's a doctor. You doctor yet is really what it felt weird. And there you go. This all leads to City Boy, of course. The second issue of The Vigil, which came out this past week, I didn't like that as much either, but I didn't get upset. And again, that Alyssa Wong part in that Spirit World, and a lot of people even warned me. And I have read Alyssa Wong stuff. I read and review Dr. Aphra each time it comes out, and I'm liking that less and less as it goes on. I ended up Iron Fist. Also, that Deadpool book, one of the most unfunny books I've ever read. But in that, people said self-insertion, Alyssa Wong self-inserts, and I wanted to I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. But after the 2 issues of Spirit World, then now we just had The Vigil, I'm now looking at City Boy, which I thought was going to be the weakest of the 3. I really thought, oh, this is weird. We haven't had it earlier. It does feel like just a rehash of Jack Hawksmoor. So how are you going to play this? How is it going to be unique? After the first issue, boom, Dark Side. You get Bruno Mannheim, which I always get a hoot out of, right? You get Inner Gang, all that stuff going on. I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool. I liked it more than I thought. And so right now, though, I'm really leaning on City Boy to maintain my point that, hey, you should give this stuff a chance. This We Are Legends. I'm still, and again, I'm yelling and screaming. I'm losing my mind for some reason over Alyssa Wong and the whole Spirit World, but I'm still going to give that 3rd issue a chance. Maybe that whole, nonsense, over it. Alyssa Wong's over it, and we can move on because I'm more interested in Cass. I'm more interested in the actual Spirit World. So we shall see. Zach says that City Boy #1 was okay. And the main reason that he's going to check it out is because of Dark Side. And I agree 100%. That's really how I was as well. I said when I was reading and reviewing City Boy that a lot of it felt to me, it felt a bit more like a manga. You end up starting out, you were dealing more with just the character development, not even development, but introduce the character, give you kind of the origin. It still was kind of a little hazy and whatever, but I was interested to the point where I'll tell you, going through that whole thing, I'm like, okay, this is cool. It's a little better than I thought. Oh shit, Dark Side. I'm in. Like, I want to see, though I think that Dark Side is going to play, from the distance. He's going to be there in the shadows of a power. He's going to want City Boy, but why does he want City Boy? Who knows? I will tell you, though, that the idea of a title named City Boy led me to do at least 10 parody songs for that one book, and I give it all the credit. I said I want to break the record for most parody songs for one comic book. I think that the old record was 0, because nobody's that dumb to do it. But I went about 10, and that's fun. City Boy #2, written by Greg Pak, art by Minkyu Jung. It's $3.99. Cameron's son embraces a new power that he's been running away from and travels through the shadows of the city, literally. But every power comes with a consequence. This upsets the city and doesn't like City Boy very much. Oh my God, the city, it's like all of the DC creators with me. He's going to get blocked by the cities. Does he have a choice to stay here any longer, or will he be forced to leave to a safer place like LexCorp? Now, I ended up where when this was first introduced, they had a bunch of solicits. Obviously, when it was solicited out, it did seem, and the setup seemed to be that we were going to get City Boy going through like a walking tour. And as Zach said, that it does feel a lot like Monkey Prince, and I agree. And even with that play, that it felt like you were going to go from city to city like you did in Monkey Prince. And I'll give a shout out too. And I think that a lot of the artists that Colors Inc., I think that they have some of those on this book as well. So it kind of even looks like it, but it's not. I think Bernard Chang might have done the Monkey Prince, but this is Minkyu Jung. But all in all, with that though, if you haven't been reading or didn't check out Monkey Prince, I'm not going to tell you that it was the most important book. I'm not even going to tell you that it was the best book. But if you have some time and want something that's kind of, some goofy fun, you get a little weird Damian Wayne at the beginning, which again, I didn't love that you were tying into so many other characters, but it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the worst. What I'm saying is check it out if you have the chance. That's what I'm saying. And City Boy, if you haven't read the first issue, again, I keep saying with the Ultra deal, and I got Ultra, I ended up getting it in, it was like some deal that I got. I'll tell you, it's well worth it. It is well worth it to go. And even if you end up just because of the convenience of going back and checking some things out. But if you haven't read City Boy #1, I would suggest, give it a shot. Go and read it. You may not put it on your pull list, but it's something that so far after one issue going into 2, you got Dark Side. It feels big. So check it out is what I'm saying. And I see that Lane Kramer is in the house. He just got done seeing Transformers Rise of the Beast, said it's a fun movie. We ended up talking at the end of our DC Comics podcast this week. I think it was in the second mail section. We were talking a bit about Transformers and talking about, the whole play of Eric, who I do the podcast with, is a huge Transformers fan, but yet has no concern at all for the Daniel Warren Johnson, Robert Kirkman, whole universe deal, Joshua Williamson on the G.I. Joe stuff. And I'm trying to get him convinced because I really, really would like to do a podcast when those come out with him. But for some reason, he just is against it. He just doesn't want to get involved. He's so again. And then I end up, people were asking him, hey, are you going to go watch the movie? And his big deal, he loved Beast Wars as a kid. That was one of his big things. And he's always a stick in the mud with stuff when people, I think that he gets this play in his head, like, well, if they say that I should like it, then I'm not going to like it. I don't get it. I'm miserable. He just ends up, he has that weird play with it, but I've actually, and Lane's saying it's fun. I've talked to about 3-4 people who went and seen it already, and everybody said that it's good fun, that it's a fun time and to check it out. So there's a little deal. I probably will never see it myself. I can't sit through a movie. I have a lot of problems, though, out of nowhere. And I did mention it on the Comic Aficionado show, I think 2 weeks ago. The idea, I ended up seeing Fast 10. I ended up, but I've only ever seen Fast and the Furious 1. I saw a little of Tokyo Drift, but that's it. I never saw any of the other Fast and the Furious movies, but my wife and all my kids love them. So I ended up where we all ended up watching Fast 10, and I didn't know what was going on. And just sitting there like, look at them cars. Look at this crazy stuff. And in that, I didn't even know I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, shit, Brie Larson's in this? I didn't know that. I'm like, oh, crazy. I had no idea. Even though my kids, and I think one of the reasons when we ended up, they watched, I think it was up to like the 6th movie when I actually then watched the first one with them. They were going to watch it. They were going to rewatch it. So I ended up watching it, and they got so sick of me sitting there saying that it was just Point Break, and they wanted no parts of me. So they didn't invite me to the other ones. But Lane's saying about the movie, the Maximals. Oh my. Here's the thing is when I end up where if I'm talking to Eric about the Transformers on our podcast, I will end up like making up names and things like that just to piss him off, to pretend that I don't know, but I don't. I don't know anything in the bit. I know Optimus Primal, and that makes me giggle. That makes me laugh when I say that, and I'm like, all right, no, that's the thing. He's saying about this, and this is one of the things that's funny. Lane says that also I'm mad. Air Razor, the maximal female Bird's Transformer, we never got to see her robot form. Legitimately one of the reasons that Eric used that why he was not going to see the movie. He heard that. He's in all these like nerdy, chat rooms. The nerve of him in these nerdy chat rooms with Optimus Primal. I remember at one point Eric was talking to me and telling me all about the Transformers and the Beast Wars and things like that. And when he does this, he just will rattle off names and things like that. Now, Optimus Primal? That sounds pretty good. But again, I say that's how I completely got into comics when I ended up working with Eric. Never had read a comic in my life. And we started working together, and we ended up where I got hired to actually replace him, because the bosses were pissed off because he never showed up for work. So they hired me. But then the problem is that because me and Eric got along so well, he ended up showing up for work more. So then we both worked together. And then they were angry because we became good friends. They didn't want that. And they even tried to play drama with us. They tried to make us hate each other, but they couldn't do it. But really, the thing is, and just as an aside, this is how things go around the Weird Science way. We go off on tangents. But when I ended up working with him, it was right at the point where the Earth 2 book and the New 52 had just been announced. The week that was announced was the week I started working with Eric. And he was a Green Lantern fan, and everybody knew this. He had a lot of Green Lantern shirts that he wore. So I'm just there with him, and everybody that we worked with, I'd only been, there a couple hours, so I didn't know these people. All these people just kept walking by Eric, and it's like, oh, I hear Green Lantern's gay. That's all they kept saying. And so Eric would just yell back at them, which one? He knew which one, but he wanted to get them. That was his dig into them, because they wouldn't have known that there was more than one Green Lantern. So basically, all day, I just stood between him and everybody else working, yelling, hey, I heard Green Lantern's gay. Then Eric would yell, which one? And then when they'd walk away, Eric started going through a list of all the Green Lanterns and how this and that, and giving me this whole rundown. And I actually got kind of interested. And then the next day, we started working, and I don't know. I think it's because I was just desperate to have anything to talk to somebody about anyway. And I said, oh, man, that was pretty cool about those Green Lanterns. I didn't know that. And he's like, well, let me tell you about the Robins. And then we went through, and then next thing you know, we had a website and a podcast, and the worst day of my life. Detective Comics number 1073. Oh, my. We have the Ram V in the house. It's written by Ram V. We have a back-up story by Dan Waters, art by Ivan Reis, Goran, Sudzuka, and Stefano Raffaele. And it's cover price $4.99. One of the things that I've been saying on the podcast, also saying anywhere I can say it, is that Ram V, he does not like to progress a story. If you like Ram V, you probably like him because of his atmosphere. The idea that he, can really go, and he takes his time, and a lot of people like that. It doesn't click for me. So that's the big problem is about the idea, where I say, and I always do, and I will say it again here, I will never say that Ram V's a bad writer, because that would be silly. And I'm sitting here, and I think I'm just on a static image. Oh, good. Oh, my goodness. Now, see, these are the snafus that I don't understand how to do. Here we go. Ah, yes, there we go. It's loading up. But you'll never hear me say that Ram V is a bad writer. You will hear me say that Ram V's writing doesn't click with me all the time. I really like the first issue of The Vigil. I think that the second issue was a little wonky last week, but people bring up his Layla Starr book, his indie book, and I loved it. I thought that was great. And I've said a lot of things about Ram V, but one of the other things that I will say is that I think that he definitely works better with his own characters, where he can go his own pace. There are certain books, like a Batman Batman stories, they don't always have to have the same pacing, but you need to have Batman do things. And he's not. I mean, a lot of the things, and I say that, I'm lying. He is doing things. For the while, he slept on Gordon's couch. Then for other times, he sat on Gordon's couch, right? And so when he started off, and Mariko Tamaki, that nonsense, and really, Mariko Tamaki wrote Batman like she never hated somebody more than Batman. She even had gone on Twitter at points and pretty much bitched and moaned, "Oh, I got to write this Batman. Woe is me that I'm on the biggest character in oh my goodness," and really seemed to hate Batman. So when Ram V first started on here, I was like, this is cool. I need to get something new. I know that Ram V takes his time, but maybe the atmosphere and the whole play, when we did end up starting with, I think was it Gilliam March? No, I can't even remember. The whole play of this whole horror type deal, that feels like it could work. But then we just did nothing. And to this point, last issue, we had the grand opening of the Orgum place. I still don't know what the hell that thing is. I said, is it like the Mall of America? Do they have a skate rink in it? I'd like that. That'd be pretty cool, right? Oh, does it have bowling alleys? I don't know. But I don't know what it is. And then it's blowing up. And I'm not saying like it's blowing up online on social media, because it was doing that before, they said. Now it's just blowing up. And it was a weird play. If you remember the last issue, how that story ended with that cliffhanger, it was like, hey, Batman, you have two choices. Either I blow up the tower and, the Orgum place and everybody lives, but everybody's there. Like, they're all going to die anyway. Or we could do this, hit that button. You have that crazy machine, that reality machine. I don't know. Is that just going to reset it at the end? Even with, and I'm going to do this week, I'll probably end up doing a Solicits podcast. DC Comics Solicits came out, and I was reading through those. And in September, you get the mention when this book comes back, you have the idea of, hey, everybody, Batman still sees Barbados. I'm like, really? Is he still running around with that music box? That story never ends. And I just had Henry Kasich, when we start doing a show for Marvel Comics, and I actually recorded one last week, and I was almost to the very end of it, and then I ditched it, and then I think I'll start one this week. Again, I apologize as well for being so crazy and loopy tonight, but I really didn't get much sleep last night. I'm not feeling so great, but this is the fun of it. But yeah, I am planning on doing a Marvel preview show as well. And I tried to step up a little bit this week with my reviews and doing a couple more Marvel reviews. And I still have reviews of the Guardians of the Galaxy that came out this past week and the Avengers. So I want to do those probably tomorrow or tonight. And when I do that, I do want to get myself more inspired to do more Marvel comics, because I ended up, I'm not going to blame all Marvel. It's kind of me, but it was also Marvel. I wasn't really enjoying a ton of the books, but I really liked the Incredible Hulk, so I was down with that. I did like, and I saw a lot of people, either loved or hated the whole Ultimate Invasion, but I was kind of into that. So yeah, I will end up doing that. But back to the Detective Comics, where there's a will, there's a way. And for Bruce, that will is Batman, because myths don't bleed, right? Well, Batman, with the last ounce of strength he has, will have to test that theory out with the Orgums as he fights through Prince Arzen's 3 powerful protectors to find out. Just as a spoiler alert, he fought through them already. That really was like one page. It didn't really work out that well. Hope is not all lost, though, as Jim Gordon and Sorrow rush their way through Gotham to help Batman before it's too late, and an Asthma demon is placed inside him. What the hell are they talking about? I think that's the problem when you delay your story as much as RMV has. It gets a little wonky with the solicits as well. The sorrow for me is when I end up opening up that book and it's like the most flowery language and puts me to sleep. But like I said, I know that some people are enjoying the story, but it's like the never-ending story. And I'm not talking about the cool movie. I'm talking about this thing. And when you see every time a solicit comes out, You're like, are we still doing that? Oh my God, we're still. And I think this thing is never going to end. I think that is his plan. It's the never ending story, as I said, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Now, again, before I move on to the next book, I will mention now with Ram V, one of the things that will extend the story as well is, of course, Night Terrors with a K, because we're going to have 2 months of a lot of these books shut down. So obviously that'll be something that when we get back to September, be like, man, we're still dealing with this, but of course we will, because at night, I just don't get it. I just want to know. I know that some people might say, well, I'm interested to see what ends up happening with the Night Terrors, but does anybody think it's a great idea to pretty much put a halt on the momentum of the whole deal with, Dawn of DC? Some of these books are hitting better than they have in years. People are excited. I have people that are talking to me that haven't even mentioned a DC Comics in 3 years. We have a guy, Repairman Jack. He used to listen to our podcast. I did not hear from that guy for 5 years. 5 years. And then out of nowhere, he ends up messaging me on Twitter and said, hey, what's up with this Dawn of DC? I hear good things about it. I'm like, well, it's pretty good. But I had to tell him, don't get too comfortable with it, because we're going to do Night Terrors with a K in the spookiest months, July and August. And I do also, as an aside, just for things on the YouTube channel, I do have a video that I am halfway done with. That's just going to kind of be a Night Terrors deal, what it's about. I think most people already know what it's about, but kind of the idea of what books are coming out, what things I'm excited about, and why I also think it might be, a bad choice, or maybe some positives. Maybe I'll find some positives with that. But this book, as you see from the pictures on the screen, Green Arrow #3, written by Joshua Williamson and art by Sean Izaakse. I like this book. I end up liking it, but to the point where there's an asterisk that with Joshua Williamson, I'm always worried. He starts out things well. He gets a little wonky with them sometimes, but I also have that asterisk because it really does rely on what is going on. This whole play of, oh my God, the Green Lantern family, or Green Arrow family, sorry, can never be around. That we can't be together. We can never when we get down to the nitty gritty, the explanation has to make some sense, number one, and it has to be big. It has to be cool. And I hope what it does is ends up bleeding out, not just the idea of it being about the Green Arrow family, but everything involved. Maybe even do that little meta deal of, oh, this is why, it's almost like when you had Wally come back for Rebirth and we find out, oh my God, this was Dr. Manhattan. He pushed this here. He moved the lantern there. I hope that it's one of those where by the end, it's also an explanation of, why we had this bullshit and why we didn't have that crap and all that. And if that works, I know I'm asking a lot from it, but he's supposed to be, Joshua Williamson, the architect of the DC. And we'll see. I hope that it makes it a lot bigger. But Arsenal and Black Canary versus Peacemaker and the new Peace Wrecker. I forgot all about Peacemaker and Peace Wrecker. I have to admit, that was kind of cool with the deal. But while Arsenal and Black Canary's quest for answers has sent them into danger, Green Arrow is lost in time and space, but at least he's not alone now. 2 members of the Green Arrow family join Oliver in the last place you would expect. The one obviously is Leanne. The other one should be Connor Hawke, but they weren't together in the last issue. So I hope that they actually find Connor and then move forward with that. But again, that whole play of we're not supposed to be together. Go talk to Amanda Waller. I said right away when that happened, like, find Amanda Waller. I felt like, okay, we're really pushing sus Amanda Waller with a lot of things and a lot of books, right? We have all over the place, but even like a Titans was mentioned when Peacemaker showed up. But the whole play of this, I think that this one might be that Amanda Waller, though is sus, but knows something that might end up helping out. I hope. But I'm even looking. Lane says that, I almost dropped all my DC books because of Night Terrors, because I'm not sure I wanted to stick with reading these books, which are expensive since they're going away for 2 months. And at one point, I know that some people were talking about, the idea of the Night Terrors and saying, well, at least we don't have to go, with it. We could just kind of, for 2 months, everybody take a break. You could always come and listen to our podcast. We'll be talking about every book and here on the YouTube channel. But then you start getting these words and things that like, oh, the story from Night Terrors will continue after. I'm like, why are you doing that now? Why are you doing this to people? They if they don't want to get involved, you're already shutting down all the books. Like you're already pissing people off. You don't have to force them. If people don't want to have a scary, spooky story in July and August, please don't make them do it. I don't know what the hell they're even thinking. I don't know, but I am looking forward to see how Green Lantern goes. So I think and I saw that Zach, he says that he's worried that he's going to drag the reunion out. I really do think so. And the funny play is, if you remember, when this book was first announced, it was going to be a 6-issue miniseries, which I thought was weird. I thought that it was odd because a Green Arrow I thought was big enough that they would end up, okay, let's just have an ongoing. It's Joshua Williamson, have some faith in the readers and have some faith in your writers to at least have that one be an ongoing. Then it was extended. And then I thought, well, I hope that they didn't extend it because they realized like he's not going to end up telling shit by the end of 6 issues. I hope it was extended. He already has that full story in place. And then when we get back to it, like, or the extended part, it will be even bigger and better. And when I say that, I kind of think of, and if you're reading it, I don't know if everybody is, but the Poison Ivy book. Poison Ivy ended up getting extended twice. It went from 6 to 10 to ongoing. And each time that it got extended, it seems like it lessened the story each time. Like G. Willow Wilson's just like, well, now I did it. I don't have to really work hard now, and I'm going to do bullcrap, because I thought that book, while I didn't love the start of it when we were talking about it on our podcast, our man Eric, who actually was intrigued that it seemed like it was going to give you a new status quo with Pam, that it was going to be this whole play. And then it kind of got away. Then we had Eyes Wide Shut parties. Then we had vaccines. Then just nonsense. But all of that is a segue to the next book that everybody's been talking about down at the Rec Center. And of course, that is Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn number 31, written by Tini Howard with a backup by Heather Ann Campbell. Art by Sweeney Boo. What up, Boo? With Filya Bratukhin on the backup art. Cover price $4.99. And if I know my Harley Quinn and the solicits, I have a feeling that I'm going to have to act out Harley Quinn now, because it's nonsense. So Harley Quinn number 31. Well, here I am trying to convince this talking rabbit not to kill. Wait, what? Ivy's home? Oh, crap. I got to clean up the apartment and hide all the plants I ruined. Maybe I should hire a bunch of sexy apartment cleaners. No, maybe you should hire a ghostwriter, maybe to write not only the solicit, but also the book, because Tini Howard, you stink. Oh, Ivy would probably want me to be here and be there for that. Okay, it's up to you, Bud and Lou. Eat all the trash. Go, 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 my babies. Please, it's the anime event of the century as I dream about my life as the protagonist of a mecha story. Time to get in the freaking robot. This book sucks. And I talked to some people this weekend where they were saying, oh my God, this Dawn of DC is great. Every book is awesome. Every book's hitting. And then I had to remind them, you do remember that Harley Quinn is a Dawn of DC book, right? Oh shit, I didn't remember that. Okay, so every book but one is, you remember Catwoman? Yeah, that's Dawn of DC branded as well. Oh no. Anything Tini Howard is terrible. To the point where, there are good and bad issues of comics. I've said this a lot. I've said it when I review Harley or Catwoman. She takes it to another level. I mean, the level of awfulness that you don't think that somebody can get that bad. Like it perplexes me. It really does. And the Catwoman book, that book just makes no damn sense. And now it's going to cross over with Batman. That's a problem. This Harley Quinn book, and I've said it's a really tough thing. And I like Harley Quinn. I know that a lot of people nowadays don't. A lot of people want her to just be, old villain Harley Quinn. I don't mind whatever she's doing as long as it's done well. What I like with Harley is a lot of times, because I think that Harley deep down ends up being someone who wants to do good, but just can't do it. She ends up always being her worst enemy. She always ends up being somebody that's going to get in her own way all the time. But her intentions sometimes are, the good deal. But the problem is when people are writing Harley, you can always tell if they don't get it. It's when they can't stop just Harleying up the book. Just because it's a Harley book, anybody buying it knows that it's Harley. But these writers seem to think they have to remind everybody that it's Harley every single panel. You don't get a story. You never get a story that way. And yeah, I end up here with the idea with Rog. He says that the run is so mid. I think you're being nice. And bruh, I like that you said bruh. You're being way nice. It is way worse than mid. It's awful. And Derek ended up asking if I have a favorite DC animation. I haven't watched a ton of stuff, but I actually do like Under the Red Hood. I thought was really good. When I first started getting into DC Comics, I had some people suggest, a bunch of the animated stuff. So I ended up, but my favorite, I do believe, if I had to, I think it's the Brave and the Bold cartoon because it's just fun. And I had a lot of fun with that. Me and my kids ended up watching it. And I ended up, we went through that whole series twice. So I would say that is actually my favorite DC animation. And Lane actually asked if I think that Punchline Mini for Night Terrors by Danny Laura will be the final knockout for her character. It will be. That's the thing. I ended up having that, my video that I talked about character progression and character development. One of the characters that I was kind of upset with the idea of Punchline, where you kept going, okay, here's Punchline, but you just kept not doing anything more with her than that. So once you then get Danny Lore and a Night Terrors, yeah. And that's the nail in the coffin. That'll be the end of it. And it's a shame because some people really do like that character. I just felt like the character never really got, somebody to take care of it once Tynan left. I know that people may have liked that miniseries with Tini Howard, but I thought that it really just went nowhere. I just went nowhere. So, and Zach says that the Harley and Catwoman books are no fun. Oh, they are not good. They're not good. But yeah, so in the solicit where we already have multiversal nonsense, it doesn't make sense that we're now gonna the idea that she got arrested for a prank war with Two-Face and then ends up for her whole deal of parole ends up where she now has to teach kids at a college. What is that? That's as bad as Catwoman going to jail and having her cat Duchess push street flavored ramen through the vents to then go into side. It makes no sense. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. Does she have a grip on any reality that happens in the world? The idea that somebody's parole and somebody's, deal is to go and work at a college. I just don't get it. I don't get it. But one of the other books that a lot of people didn't get is the next one up here, and is a finale as I desperately try to get these things going here. But it's one of those books that anytime this book comes up, people will have a reaction to it. And they'll have a reaction of why this book didn't work and why all this stuff going down. I will tell you that no matter what anybody says, and you can say, the reasons or what is all your own. I'm telling you that this book, which is Tim Drake Robin, I'm telling you, it wouldn't have worked any sort of way. It didn't matter anything about what Megan Fitzmartin was doing, except for the fact that Megan Fitzmartin cannot write a book, cannot do anything. That Dark Crisis that book sucked. This sucks. Like, she cannot write a story. And yet, for some reason, DC decided, just because she was the one in, again, an awfully written story in the Batman Urban Legends where Tim came out saying that, hey, Bernard, me and you, let's date. So you have that going on. And again, if that didn't even happen, if that story was Tim saying, you know what? I like the chicks and I like Steph and me, and the book still would have sucked and been canceled. It's terrible. It's so bad. It just adds that other layer on top, not just the idea that Tim came out. That's, again, everybody has their own personal opinion. But the idea that Megan Fitzmartin couldn't even set that up or do anything with it, end up progressing nothing, that's what really ended up where nobody in their right mind would ever say that this book was even readable. It was that bad, including the greatest thing that I've ever read in my life, when Tim Drake walks away from a burning building with people dying inside and just walking around with Bernard, then to say, oh my God, I think I just figured something out, and then running back there. That makes no sense. But this is it. The Reign of Terror is over. Tim Drake Robin, number 10, written by Megan Fitzmartin, art by Nicholas Zizmazija, cover price of $3.99. And I love the idea, too, here, with all of this going on, and this is the finale. I'm even looking, and I'm telling you, Nicholas Zizmazija, I like to think that that's how you say it. Like some people, the art isn't even that good. I mean, it's better than Riley Rossmo. That Riley Rossmo nonsense at the beginning, holy moly. That looked like, I said, it made my eyes vomit, is what happens when I see that guy's art. It is that bad. I can't stand it. But this isn't that good either. But here's the solicit. This is the finale. And this is all you could come up with. Robin and Batwoman are trapped in the lair of the Chaos Monsters. Will they be able to escape with their sanity intact? That's it. I want to know if I can escape with my sanity intact. Because when I read that book, it drives me nuts. It actually, and I know that Zach has been listening to the podcast for quite some time. And I know that he has heard the times probably when I'm doing this. And I'm not even joking when we're talking. And I say to Eric, I am now depressed after talking about these books. Like I end up, whenever we have to talk about Tim Drake Robin, it's usually the last book of the podcast. That is because we saved, the worst for last. So we get to that book, we get done, and then we end up stop recording it. And then I just sit there like, what the hell am I doing this for? Like this book is so bad that it ends up where I can't even, I sit there and I go and I lay down in bed, like just crying myself to sleep because of this nonsense. The price is a trap. There's more than one trap there, but you end up looking at that art again. and if anybody listening thinks that Megan Fitzmartin will be able to make sense of this Chaos Monster story that ended up stealing Batwoman's memories for a month and did this, and then I'll sell them a bridge in a swamp in Florida, because it is so bad. It is so bad. And Zach even says here that the idea that Tim Drake is a book that should be good, but it most definitely isn't. It isn't. It's terrible. And when we talk about it and we go on, Eric will always have to remind everyone that Tim Drake had a hell of a run. The Chuck Dixon deal, I mean, it's not a character that can't have a book, obviously. But most of the writers nowadays suck. So you don't really have long runs like that. In the meantime, sometimes you do, like Jason Aaron's run on Avengers. That book sucked. But you end up with all of that going down. It's a shame. And just to point out, again, we just had the finale to Batgirls. Clone Rad just had Batgirls number 19 was the finale to that series. And if you told me 2 years ago, if you said to me, listen, there's going to be a Batgirls book with Steph and Cass, also with Babs too. And seriously, in my whole play, I love Cass. Cass is my it's weird. Like Cass is my favorite Batgirl, but my favorite character of them is still Barbara. It's a weird play there for me. But if you ended up saying you're going to have a Batgirls book with Cassandra, Stephanie, and Barbara, and we're also going to have a Tim Drake Robin solo series, I would have thought this is a damn golden age. Well, what are you doing here? I mean, are the streets paved with gold? Or in my case, like gravy and biscuits, right? Or steak or something. I mean, this sounds like a golden age. Okay. And yet, when we see what happens and they stink so bad, the problem is, though, is that you always worry that DC is thinking to themselves that it's the characters that won't work. Oh, and even when you point out, like I said, Eric will point out all the time, Tim Drake had a 100-issue run. You can say that to DC, but do they then respond with, yeah, but nowadays it really won't work? Because it will. It will. I've been saying since, I mean, even the New 52, but especially when we kept going to the DCYOU, then we went into the Rebirth, then we get the Infinite. Like each step of the way, I think I'm not the only one. I wanted a Robin's book. Now we did get that, whole round robin. Then that book sucked. I'm talking about a proper deal and the regular deal. I really want that. Like, oh my God, this will be awesome. We can have, and so when we get a Tim Drake, you're like, all right, well, this could be cool. Now, when you're thinking of the Tim Drake book, I think a lot of people, oh, this will be cool because as it goes on, maybe Jason will show up. Damian will be there. Oh my God, we could do all this. We could get everybody in here and do that. And the idea, it's never going to happen because the book sucks so bad. I didn't even know what happened in the book. At one point, legitimately, if you haven't been reading this Tim Drake Robin, he solved the mystery by throwing up on somebody. That was where Megan Fitz said, Tim Drake, he's so smart that he knew that the acidic stomach acid of his vomit would save the day. Who the hell thinks of that? I have no idea. I have no idea. And Evil Black Cat said, my female friends who read Batgirls praised it, while the guy friends who read it say it's meh. I think that the big play here, and I don't even think it's, females versus males of reading it or whatnot. And I was going to make a joke. Well, obviously, your female friends. But no, I think that the big play I had with it was I really think that at one point it could have been a all ages book. And it should have been. I think that the way they were writing it, they tried to get edgy at points. But it really felt odd, especially because when they were getting on the book, they ended up saying that they thought that the Batgirls were 13. Fine, just go with that. I know it's ridiculous. They didn't seem to know or care that Cass and Steph are both very capable. I always bring up the fact that in James Tynion's Detective Comics and Rebirth, Batman ended up admitting that if he ever was afraid of anybody fighting hand to hand, it would end up being Cassandra Cain, who could take him out. And Cassandra Cain, a really good, yin and yang, or actually yang and yang of Damian Wayne. They both had very similar, upbringings. They were made to be weapons, these sort of things. And I don't mind having a story where you try to, break those bonds, as we end up where Zach Walker talking about Bondo. Oh my God. But the book never really got past. It got too convoluted. You end up having Clue Master in it to work through the stuff, but Shiva was in it and did nothing. She just disappeared, so you didn't get Cass to work. It just always was trying to do the next thing without ever setting up the last thing in my mind, and so nothing really hit overall. But there were moments where I think that some people could enjoy it if they are into, say, not action-based comics. And I don't want to be a stereotypical jerk saying like, oh, those female friends, they just want it. But there were some moments that were nice moments, things that you even get in like a slice of life manga at points. But then they ended up having to do this with a serial killer, or oh my God, we end up having Kluma. And it really just tried to jump around and never really did anything. It's like the jack of all trades, master of none. It really was throughout that whole deal. And I really wish that maybe, and also remember too, Jessica Chen, the editor on the Batgirls book, just wanted to insert herself constantly, which was annoying. And again, do your job as an editor, because legitimately, you were the one that let go the idea that Clue Master was dead when he already had been brought back years before. So instead of making your little jokes in your narration boxes, do your damn job. And then also set a tone for the book that was consistent through the whole series. Now, this Tim Drake, though, to end that, it's been consistent tone. It sucks. That's it. It's been horrible. It started out with awful art to go with the awful story. Then it's just been jumping around. Once you can tell that they said This isn't going to continue. Now it's just artist of the month. Now we do have Nicholas Seismozija on the ending of it, which the art kind of goes a little bit with Riley Russell. I don't know, with a trade or whatever, but it's nonsense. It is nonsense. And so with all of that, and I agree. And Evil Black Cat said Jessica Chen and Andrea Shea are the worst assistant editors DC, and I agree. And that's, I know that that's kind of the deep dive deal, but once you start reading the books and start looking and saying, okay, wait, who's the editor? Oh, okay, I keep seeing these names pop up in these real bullshit books. So it's just nonsense. But with that, the Clunrads now are done, except for the Nightwing book in the Night Terrors, because now they're going to be doing that. Megan Fitzmartin, maybe the Reign of Terror ending here, but not, because we also have, I think Megan Fitzmartin's going to be doing, at least it's just one deal, but she'll be doing one of the Black and White stories coming up in the Brave and the Bold. I think that it ends up being the maybe August one, maybe September, but we will still have to deal with that. And it doesn't look like it's a Tim Drake story. And another thing, just, and that this is it. This was the last solicit. Actually, I'll throw in one more solicit of a book that I'm not actually reading, but to go with this idea, and we were talking about how DC might be blaming the characters and not the writers. And one of the things that drives me nuts is the idea, not only that, but I'm telling you, and that is the thing when Megan Fitzmartin, that Robin Eternal, I like the first issue enough, but seriously, bringing up the Lazarus resin, that ended up being something that would not go away for so long, and it just was nonsense. And you kept, remember the Lazarus resin, she tried to explain it in that of it greases up the robots, but then it does this, but it can kill you, but it does that. I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That should have been the red flags that we all got then. But back to the thing I was saying about where not only do I think that DC will blame the characters and not the writers, but why, oh, why do they end up attaching characters to a writer? Again, you end up having Megan Fitzmartin becomes the Tim Drake writer. Well, after a couple issues of bullshit, somebody should have said, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's back off on here. Like, somebody else should, not only could somebody else write Tim Drake, somebody should write Tim Drake, because you get somebody who has, just imagine where all of a sudden, say a Jeremy Adams ends up writing a Tim Drake book. You don't change anything else but that. And I guarantee you, it's going to be better. It might not be your favorite. You may still avoid it because of certain things, but I guarantee you it will be better. But what we get is Megan Fitzmartin, Tim Drake. So then when that book tanks and it just ends, you don't get to continue it. You don't have somebody else write it because they're so ingrained with Megan Fitzmartin being the Tim Drake writer that you end up and I'm telling you, Commander Cody, there's a couple things, and I'll go with you here. Tim is Sale's Death Note. Tim has to go away for a while. But I also think there's other characters like Harley. And I said that Harley is a character that I like more than a lot of people, and whatever. But I have said now for over a year that Harley has to go away. There's too much Harley. There's too much of that. And so what you need to do is for Harley at least, you need to have her go away so that people will then want her back. Then you bring her back and hopefully you get somebody to do it. But with Tim has to, everybody has a bad taste in their mouth with Tim. He has to go away now. What is good though is his solo book's done, but I think everybody will agree, even if you don't love the Chip Zdarsky Batman, Tim's pretty good in that. Tim was pretty good. So I think that what you do, if I would sit there, and it's a shame that you end up, it doesn't seem like at DC they even have like a continuity kid there, somebody that they go to. One of the things I always not laugh at, but the idea where Lucas ended up always had that guy who would do the continuity. One guy who's such a nerd that he knows everybody who was in the cantina and what the hell they were up to. And then we do this so that they can keep that deal. They need that kind of person at DC. But what they also need is just somebody there, because the editors aren't doing it. They need someone who's there as the caretaker. Just call them that. It could be me. I'm the caretaker. And what I do is each week I read books. And then when I see this bullshit, I end up getting a hold of the editors and the writers of those books and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. You got to stop doing this bullshit. Like, this isn't right. You got to do this. And then when a book like Tim Drake fails, I would have a plan. Okay, what we need is Tim's going to have to show up in this book. Then he could be a guest star in that, start rehabilitating him, start doing some things. And then eventually maybe you can have another book. But I think that anybody who's a Tim Drake fan is probably pretty sad right now, because I don't think that we're going to get a solo Tim Drake series for a very, very long time now, because that was such a failure. But it wasn't the fault of Tim Drake. It really wasn't. And just for me, I am a Dick Grayson fan through and through. I mean, if you listen to anything that we do, you can tell I'm a big fan of Dick, so I love him. And so all of that going on, I wanted to get involved in a, monthly Tim Drake book. I never had been I wasn't reading comics when Chuck Dixon was doing the Tim Drake stuff. So it's always cool to have a run going on at the time so you can collect it and you guess at what's coming down the line and all that stuff. And so I was really excited about a Tim Drake book. And then Megan Fitzmartin, you could tell from like 3 pages in, even in that Dark Crisis story, that she's just not a good writer, just not a good writer at all. So yeah, all of that. The last deal though, and I have to do this, I have to delay a bit, but the last one is a book that I hear people tell me that it's actually really good. I have not read it. I haven't read one issue of it. I said at one point that I might read it in trade eventually, but I say a lot of things like that. I don't know. I do a lot of podcasts, so I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get to it. But what I'm talking about is the Riddler Year One, and it's the penultimate issue, I guess. I thought it might have been the end, but it's issue number 5. And for some reason, I was thinking, what are we at Marvel here? We got 5 issue deals, but no, it's the penultimate issue. And like I said, I think that a lot of people have told me that it's really good, that it's a cool book. It's one of those where I like to, where if somebody, say, doesn't want to read a Tim Drake because you don't like the way that's going, maybe you can go and read the Riddler Year One. And yes, Lane asked, is that the one written by Paul Dano? And yes, it is. Indeed, it is. And it is written by Paul Dano, art by Steven Asubik, cover price of $4.99. The penultimate issue of this hit miniseries features an unusual break in format. Why would you do that in the penultimate issue? As we see Edward Nashton constructing his master plan for taking down the corrupt officials and criminals of Gotham City in the pages of his journal. As his mind spirals deeper and deeper, so too does his writing become more unhinged. How can he continue to labor at his accounting job by day while also becoming more enraged by what he's uncovered? As shown in the Batman movie, or The Batman Movie, Edward fills thousands of pages with his rantings, hopefully not his ravings. Here we get a glimpse into something that was never meant to be seen, and a mind equally brilliant and unhinged. By the end, a turning point will be reached, and Gotham's greatest menace will come one step closer to being unleashed. Actor Paul Dano, the Batman, and artist Steven Subik continue the origin of the Riddler, leading up to his appearance in Matt Reeves' epic film. So yeah, that's pretty cool, right? Little journals going. I ended up reading something the other day, because I end up, reading a lot of books for podcasts, especially the DC one, where sometimes we end up, hey, we're going to record an hour, I get to read all this. So I did read, because I have the worst memory and I can't pay attention to save my life. So I did read. And so you have to get a journal and actually get paper to pencil, and, don't do it online. Do this. I tried for like 2 seconds. And I'm writing things in this stupid journal. I'm like, dear diary, I like, screw this. Just read it and did the things as normal. It just made me laugh, though, that I always end up where it gets me, because obviously once you watch the one video, then all of a sudden all these self-help, learn this and that video keeps coming up. I'm like, ooh, what are they going to say that's going to help me? None of it does. Never helps me at all. Yes, and Zach says, story over continuity. Dan DiDio did say that. So did Wrong Turn at one point. And that was the DCYOU, where he really came out and said the story over continuity and drove Eric Shea insane. he couldn't take it. He said that this is the worst. And actually, back in the day, and a lot of people don't like Dan DiDio, and there's reasons, but Dan DiDio at that point actually recorded a personal message for Eric about story over continuity for his birthday the one year, and ended up making fun of Eric because he did listen to the podcast back in the day, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool indeed. So yeah, we have this person. I got to find that. That'd be funny to replay at one point. But that is that. That is the show. That is it. We have the story over continuity. That is it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I hope that it was okay that, you know, it's probably going to be like this every time, just rant and rave and kind of go off topic and talk about things in general, to the point where maybe it even ends up being, well, we'll kind of preview the things, but we'll more talk about what's going on in all of the stuff and everything going on with that. And yeah, you ended up where the idea of the movies. Oh, wait, I hit the wrong one. I'll hit that in a second. The first two acts of the Pattinson movie were great. Last act ruined it. And with that, I was supposed to do a podcast on it. And I ended up watching like the first 20 minutes and I kept falling asleep. And I end up, the joke I had all the time was, I don't know, there's a lot of people looking through binoculars and breathing heavy. I just can't watch movies anymore. I can't sit there and watch them. I have the worst problems. But yeah, thanks everybody. Thank you there, Commander Cody. You have a nice day as well. And it is good that Rami Salami ended up being able to join us live. He actually realized we were doing it, and off we go. And it was asked before, and yeah, there's going to be a deal. I'll start doing a bit of the Marvel stuff, maybe some indie. There's just so many indie to go through, but maybe highlight some of the things. Right now, if you're not aware, on Fridays, me and my man Gray from Wakasashi's Tea House, we're going through like one book that we kind of see and whatnot. So that usually will be coming out Friday. Maybe we'll even do that live at one point. And Comic Boom Rockies, this great overview, Jim. Thank you, Rocky. And go and check out Comic Boom Rockies channel. Definitely him and Jace going through the DC Comics each and every week. And that comes out usually late night, early morning, like Tuesday. Or Monday into Tuesday, right? Is that? I always get things wrong. I end up watching it on Wednesday after I've read most of the books. So with all that, check his stuff out and everything else with it. And you end up where sex Gabe can convince that Gabe is not convincing me of anything with Predator. That guy's sus. And Lane says, thanks for the stream. Look forward to the next stream. Will you ever get Gabe on one of these? I ended up, we had Gabe on, and then he felt uncomfortable that time we were doing it because he thought that I was spoiling too much. Now that we don't get the review, we can't spoil anything, but yet I can't get a hold of him sometimes. So yeah, he'll probably be on eventually again. So with all that, we'll be doing it live. I'm getting used to doing all this stuff, so I think it's pretty cool. But that will be it. Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks everybody for all the comments and stuff. I try to get back to everybody on all the videos, so I really do like that. It actually, I told Eric, who, again, if some of you don't listen to the DC Comics podcast, Eric, who I always do stuff with and did the website and all that with forever, I tried to get him convinced or inspired to do some videos, because I said it's like back in the day, there was a lot more, you know, people excited and commenting and things like that. I said, you got to do it. And he's like, I got Dead by Daylight to play. That's all he does. He plays the Dead by Daylight. That's it. But thanks, everybody. I'm going to hit the deal, and I will talk to you all next week.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.